TFA fam, what is up? What is happening? Week 14 is almost in the books. We are almost on to week 15. So it's time to look at some of these week 15 waiver wire ads. I hope everybody had a great week. I hope everybody's getting ready for the fantasy playoffs that start in week 15. And so let's just go ahead and jump right into the fantasy quarterbacks that we're looking at. Now, this list isn't as big as what we normally do because, one, if you're in the fantasy playoffs, you're probably not looking as much. One, we also have waivers as well, no bye weeks as well to really worry about. But I digress. Let's just jump right into it. One injury we do have to monitor is is Lamar Jackson, who left early in the first half of that game with an injury. We don't know if he's going to be available for this upcoming week, so we'll have to see on that. But other than that, I think if you did lose him, I think some of these guys are viable options. Tua Tagovailoa, gets coming off their bye this week, but does get the Jets in week 15. Rostered only 32% of leagues. He is the QB 10 over the last 4 weeks, and on the season, he ranks top 5 in red zone completion percentage, deep ball completion percentage, pressure completion percentage, and true completion percentage on the season. And he faces a Jets defense that ranks 32nd in pass TVOA and allows the 13th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So I love Tua, adding him here in this spot against the Jets. So I think he's a great option. He's played him once before. I think he threw 270 and 2 touchdowns, against his very same defense not that long ago. Now we have Justin Fields, who's playing fantastic tonight against the Green Bay Packers. He already has 60 yards rushing in the first half of this game. And his remaining schedule is actually fantastic. It's somebody that I could actually see myself, rostering for the rest of the season if needed. And he faces a Vikings defense this upcoming week that has been absolutely awful all season. They allow the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterback, as well as the 2nd most fantasy passing yards and the 4th most touchdowns on the season. And the remaining schedule is Minnesota, at Seattle, and the New York Giants, excuse me. And so just great matchup after great matchup. So this could be a nice end of the season for Justin Fields, only rostered 19% of leagues. So if he's out there, I'm looking to add Justin Fields if I can. Next up, we have Big Ben. Yes, it's hard to trust Big Ben, but he is only rostered in 22% of leagues. It's a great matchup this week against Tennessee. Completed 28 of 40 for 308, 3 touchdowns and 1 interception against the Vikings. While I do think Big Ben feels a little desperate, he has put up 19 or more fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 weeks. And the Steelers, take on the Titans, who have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So Big Ben is a little bit desperate here, but I do like the matchup here. And so I think Big Ben is definitely a direction you could go. And then Jimmy G, which is tough to trust because they just don't throw the ball very much. But today he did complete 27 of 41 for 296 and 2 for 20.14 fantasy points. Like I said, he's not a high ceiling, but I think he has a safe floor, especially against the Falcons defense that ranks 30th in pass DVOA and the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So these are kind of the top 4 guys that I'm looking at, especially if Lamar Jackson's out. You may need one of these guys. I think Tua makes a lot of sense. And then Justin Fields, even from a longer perspective, depending on what happens with Lamar Jackson, if you were to be out for any length of time, then I do think Justin Fields makes some more sense as a long-term ad as well as we are moving our way through the fantasy playoffs. So let's jump over to the running back position where let's go Rashad Penny. Just fantastic. All week, I was pounding the table for Rashad Penny, telling everybody to add him, that he could absolutely be a league winner, and he absolutely slayed. 16 for 137 and 2 touchdowns against the Houston Texans. Yes, I get the matchup was fantastic, but nobody wanted to play this guy this week because it was Rashad Penny, right? But he completely out-touched Alex Collins, 16-7. 2 of his scores actually came on 37 and 42-yard runs, showing his explosiveness. And like I've been saying all week, he possesses league-winning upside. Their closing schedule is the Rams, which is a decent run defense, but nothing to be overly worried about. And then Chicago and Detroit. So the ending schedule here for Rashad Penny is actually really solid, and they have nobody else. All their running backs are terrible. Adrian Peterson is dust. You have Alex Collins, who's fucking awful. I think he had on his 7 carries. I think it was like 16 yards or something, just absolutely dreadful. So Rashad Penny is the only guy in town. So he's an absolute must add for me. And I think he could absolutely be somebody that we look back on that, helps people win a fantasy championship, as crazy as it sounds, as long as he can stay healthy. But absolutely Rashad Penny, add him where you can. The other one, Austin Eckler, left today with an ankle injury. We're going to have to see because they play Thursday night against the Chargers. So we don't have a whole lot of time here for him to be able to get healthy. So if he's not, we're looking at Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly. They pretty much split touches right down the middle. 9 carries for Jackson for 35 yards. Kelly had 10 carries for 33. Larry Roundtree was a healthy and active. Jackson also had 1 reception for 7 yards. This is a home matchup on Thursday night against the Chiefs. This is going to be a big game, really kind of for control of the division here. And so, if Eckler is forced to miss, I think Jackson would be the more worthy add because I think he'd be utilized more in the passing game here. So Justin Jackson would be the priority for me, and then followed up by Joshua Kelly, depending on where you stand. Next up is Royce Freeman, and I actually hate this, but if you're desperate times calls for desperate measures. Yeah, he is absolutely unknown everywhere. He had 11 carries today for 15 yards, absolutely dreadful. But he did have 6 catches for 51 yards. Burkhead left the game with a groin injury, and David Johnson missed this week due to COVID protocol. The Texans do take on a Jaguars defense this week, so that is a pretty decent option here. But the matchup is decent, but man, I really don't want to play him unless I absolutely have to, just because it's hard to trust any Texans running back at this point. And then David Johnson might also return here. And then some other guys I have on here: Khalil Herbert, Jordan Howard, Naheem Hines, Dearness Johnson. Kareem Hunt did leave that game, but I don't think it's going to be anything serious. So we'll have to monitor that. But I don't think Kareem Hunt. They do play Saturday, so he has a little bit of time. Latavius Murray, Devontae Booker, Ronald Jones are all those kind of guys that if they're out there, maybe a handcuff type option. So those are kind of the running backs. But like I said, Rashad Penny, and hopefully people picked him up beforehand and actually have him already on their roster, because I think we could be in for a nice little end of the year for Rashad Penny here. Let's move over to wide receivers. Once again, Russell Gage, 53% rostered, 4 receptions on 6 targets for 64 yards, 10.4 fantasy points. He has been targeted 6 or more times in 5 of his last 6 games. He has double-digit fantasy points in 5 of his last 6. Listen, I get it this week with Russell Gage. They didn't really have to do a whole lot. They didn't have to throw very much. They ran the ball 34 times today against the Panthers, so they didn't really have to open up this offense very much. So, for them, I think better stuff is coming. They do get a great matchup this week against San Francisco. San Francisco's secondary can definitely be had. So Russell Gage, if he's still sitting out there, add him. Follow this up. So some other guys I have, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I definitely think is still a guy we can look at, especially with Randall Cobb being out. Allen Lazard is the one that's doing better so far in this game tonight, but I do think Marquez Valdes-Scantling does have some waiver appeal, especially with Randall Cobb out. There's just one less mouth to feed in this offense. Next up, we have KJ Osborne, who actually, had a pretty decent game despite only 3 receptions for 83 yards. It was targeted 9 times and scored a touchdown. Still only rostered in 38% of Yahoo leagues. With Thielen probably still out this week, I think he has some pretty solid appeal against a Bears secondary, so I do like adding him. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, it looks like he appears to be the guy in Detroit. He's only still rostered in 12% of Yahoo leagues, 24 targets of the last 2 weeks with a 31% target share today, 8 for 73. He's definitely the top target for golf. And the remaining schedule, they get Arizona, but then Atlanta and Seattle to close out the season. So kind of some worthwhile matchups here for Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't think he's somebody who has an incredibly high ceiling, but if he's going to continue to see this kind of target share from the slot, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown does make a lot of sense for an ad. Donovan Peoples-Jones, talked about him last week, going to talk about him again this week. Hauled in 5 of 7 for 90, trailed only Jarvis Landry and team leading targets with 8. I think he should be viewed as a viable wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 against the Raiders this week. Baker Mayfield looked a little bit better, especially in the first half. They didn't have to do as much in the second half with the kind of a lead. They just kind of milked the clock and kind of grinded it down. But Donovan Peoples-Jones, I think is a very, very viable ad. He's the number 2 wide receiver in this offense. This is a run-heavy offense, but in matchups, they're going to have to throw the ball. Donovan Peoples-Jones is definitely the deep threat and kind of the big body wide receiver, especially somebody that's going to get goal line looks as well. So I like Donovan Peoples-Jones as a must-add. And then Gabriel Davis. So I want to talk about him. Manny Sanders did leave this game with an injury. We're going to have to monitor that this week. And if he was forced to miss time, Gabriel Davis makes for a pretty solid ad. 5 receptions on 8 targets today for 43 yards and a touchdown. He's now scored a touchdown back-to-back weeks. And he's also 2.4 yards per route run, which is 12th among all wide receivers. And he's 8th in red zone targets, despite only playing 34% of the of the snaps on the season, which is 35th among all wide receivers. So he's definitely involved in the passing game. And this is an offense that throws the ball a ton. They don't have anybody to run the ball at all outside of Josh Allen. And so Gabe Davis kind of makes some sense. Now, this is not a great matchup against the Panthers this week. And then I believe after that, they get the Patriots. So some tougher matchups. But for an offense that throws as much as the Bills do, I do like Gabriel Davis. Then you have Rashad Bateman, who came out today and really kind of bounced back after not being involved whatsoever in this offense, over the last couple of weeks. Came out today for 7 receptions on 8 targets, 103 yards, best game of the year, 17.3 fantasy points, 24% rostered. And so he's somebody, if he's sitting out there, somebody drops him because he wasn't doing anything, I don't mind adding him. Maybe he's a guy that can kind of figure this out over the second half of the season, or over the last part of the season anyway, the last third of the season, because I think Rashad Bateman, we know he has tremendous upside. He has a tremendous talent. And so we'll see what happens, especially with Lamar Jackson. But so I think he's somebody that we should be looking at. Josh Palmer and Jalen Guyton. Josh Palmer, both of them actually scored a touchdown today. Josh Palmer had 5 receptions on 7 targets for 66 yards and a score. Jalen Guyton, 3 receptions for 87 yards and a score. This is really going to depend on if Keenan Allen is out. With Thursday coming around very quickly, if Keenan Allen forces to miss again, Josh Palmer and Jalen Guyton, widely available. Don't hate them as ads this week if they are out. But if Keenan Allen is back, I'm probably not as excited about either one of these guys. Maybe Jalen Guyton, just because he is the deep threat here in this offense. Robbie Anderson, best game of the year. Most people have dropped him. The tough part is they do get the Bills. The Bills are a very good pass defense, especially their secondary, but he's only rostered in 44% of leagues, 7 receptions for 84 yards and a touchdown. He's targeted 12 times. But I feel like you're chasing a little bit of that upside that he just provided, because I don't know what to expect, especially against a tough matchup against the Bills. Then you have Josh Reynolds and Nick Westbrook-Akeen. Both guys I think you could look at in very deep leagues, but somebody that I just wouldn't feel comfortable, especially the fantasy playoffs really starting this week. But I think both of them, they are seeing targets. Josh Reynolds, I think, saw 5 targets today. So he is kind of the big body, the red zone option, especially inside the red zone and stuff like that. But just not a lot of upside there with him. And there's some deep league stats, just the same guys. Brian Edwards. Rashad Perriman did catch the game-winning touchdown today, 58-yard touchdown reception there. But I think it's kind of a little bit of a thin ad. Somebody that it's hard to trust on a week-to-week basis. And then Terrace Marshall. And then Josh Gordon scored a touchdown today. Let's go. Love to see that. Finally, Josh Gordon scores a touchdown. Now let's jump over to the tight end position. We have Tyler Conklin, Brevin Jordan, who I've been talking about, and Austin Hooper as the 3 kind of tight end ads that we should be looking to add. Tyler Conklin didn't do a whole lot, in this matchup on Thursday night against the Steelers. I think he was only targeted 3 times, but they do get the Bills this week. And I think somebody, that they're going to be looking to target, especially with the likelihood of Adam Thielen being out. Rostered in 48% of leagues. Now, the other 2, Brevin Jordan is absolutely free everywhere. Rostered in less than 1% of leagues, and he's just kind of flown under the radar. I get it. He plays for the Texans, and he's hard to trust, but 4 receptions, 7 targets for 26 yards and a touchdown. He was actually the tight end 4 so far on the week. And so, Brevin Jordan has quietly started to get more and more involved in this offense. And, like I said, I get it. It is the Texans. So, not a lot of people want to play a Texan outside of probably Brandon Cooks. But he continues to see more and more opportunities. He played 60% of the snaps week 12, 45% of the snaps week 13. He's running more and more routes. He's seeing more and more targets. And they don't really have anybody else to throw the ball to. He's definitely the preferred option inside the red zone. The running backs are terrible. And so I like Brevin Jordan. He is a rookie this year that kind of a lot of people thought would be better than what he was, or not better than what he was, but was drafted higher than what he was, but he fell in the draft process. But Brevin Jordan, out of Ole Miss, somebody that continues to, I think that people should be looking to add, especially if they're desperate at tight end. And then you have Austin Hooper. This is really going to depend on David Njoku is out because he was out today. But Austin Hooper, 5 for 7 for 30 yards and a score in this matchup. Like I said, they didn't really have to throw the ball in the second half, and so he was much more involved in the first half. But still, I think right now with them having very lack of passing options, a matchup against the Raiders, who is a very soft secondary team that you can throw against, I don't mind Austin Hooper either this week. But if David Njoku comes back, I would be a little less inclined. So with that being said, that is all the guys that I'd be looking to add. If I was going to, the must add for me this week is Rashad Penny. I know that's weird to say. I know he's injury waiting to happen, but I'm going to ride this train as long as I can. So let's jump over and see if there's any questions. I don't know if there is, but if there is, we will get to them. Walito, let's go. Yes. Uzi, terrible DFS day out of the playoffs for one of my leagues. Unfortunately, that is a shame. Yes, I think Lamar Jackson has a chance to play next week, but worried about his mobility. I would be as well. I don't know if he's going to be able to play or not. I would expect with where they stand, they're going to try to do whatever they can. But I will say Tyler Huntley has looked decent in both of his times he's got to play this year. I mean, he almost brought them back against Cleveland today. And then Harry Wolf. Are any of these guys 10-man league ads? Yeah, I think so. I think, Rashad Penny. At this time of the year, I mean, I get it, 10-team leagues, your benches are probably a little bit stronger, but because of the depth that's out there in a 10-man league. But like I said, I think Rashad Penny is going to be the starting running back moving forward here in this offense, with Russell Wilson. With Russell Wilson, each of the last 2 weeks, it started to look better and better. And so I like Rashad Penny. And like I said, I said it all last week, and now people are going to be and people are going to be needing running backs, and so and they don't have anybody else to give the ball to. So I like him as well. Is Dak still a weekly start? This game was weird today for them because it was a game where they really got up quickly. The defense scored, and they didn't really they kind of, it's like they took the foot off the gas and they just kind of coasted after that, and it almost came back to bite them in the ass because they almost ended up losing that game, but. I think if, when it comes to Dallas and the remaining schedule here, they don't really have a running game. Zeke still looks absolutely broken right now. But, if you look at the remaining schedule here, they get the Giants, which is an excellent matchup. Washington, this very same team, but at home, and then Arizona to close out the season. So, I think here against the Giants, we know the Giants' pass defense is absolutely terrible. So you're definitely going to want to play him there. And then Washington, I think this could have been a much better game for Dak. But yeah, the last 2 games, he has not played well. 12 fantasy points and 11 fantasy points over the last 2 games. You have to go back to week 12 against the Raiders where he threw for 25. So really, Dak has been tough to trust. I think you can trust him here against the Giants, but I get it with with how he's playing, especially in the fantasy playoffs. It's hard to trust somebody like that. But other than that, I think those are the guys this week, and it's not a necessarily strong waiver ad week, but I definitely think Rashad Penny is somebody that I'm going to be looking to add. But then past that, if you need some, some streaming options or what have you. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody checking out the show. We'll be back again here, on Wednesday with all of our must start plays. And then, we'll be going live again this week. And then we also have the DFS DJ Nation on Thursday. So I appreciate everybody checking it out. I hope everybody makes the playoffs. I hope everybody made the playoffs. And we're only a few weeks away from the fantasy championship. So let's keep the train rolling, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a great night. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. It's free. Let's go. Christmas is soon. I'll see you all soon. We out.